Hey, Tipsy Babes. I'm Amber,
I'm Chloe.
and you're listening to the Two Tipsy Babes podcast, where we're sipping our way through life, travels, working in healthcare, and our favorite books. So, we already did our shots in the first video, and because overall we're going to be drinking 2 drinks and having a shot, we're not doing the shot for the second part. That's a little too much for one day.
A
For
little too
one,
much for Chloe.
I mean, it's not even 2 o'clock yet. We don't need to be having that much alcohol. We have to be productive today.
It's
But
5 o'clock somewhere.
I mean, it sure is. That's why we're drinking still. We're just not going to be having 6 shots total. That's what it would be for me. If I had another shot right now, by the end of this, it would be 6 shots total. I mean, we
I
spent
wouldn't know
enough
because I
time.
don't measure mine. But yeah,
Yeah, that's because you're crazy.
yeah. Hey guys, do you guys want to know what we're drinking?
So, Chloe, what are you drinking?
Guys, just so you know, this is take 4. But
Take 4.
I, I'm drinking Malibu White Peach Cranberry. Mix
Yes.
it with my balls. Are in here. You can see it. In the last episode, they were already like so small, but now you can see my array of balls.
Yes, they're not tiny balls this time.
They're the
Our
right
poor
size balls.
people listening are gonna have like shell shock from your tapping.
Oh, guys, I have a sword in my hand.
No, it's not a sword. First of all, you're gonna be tapping just like you were clapping. Like,
Tap, tap, tap.
it's
Amber,
a,
what are you drinking?
I am drinking a brown sugar bourbon coffee.
Mm.
It's delicious.
If you guys want to know how she made it, just go back to the episode prior. And she talks about how she makes it. I actually think I might try making it.
You
That
should.
sounds really good.
Oh, it's strong. Ooh, this one, it gave me chills just now taking a sip of that. All
Well,
right.
guys, I hope you're prepared and she's already drunk, so this is good because we're about to get spicy. All right. That was really loud. I'm so sorry. The
It's
book.
fine.
So Amber picked this book. It's called The 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty. How to find it, keep it, and let it go.
She cute. Yep.
So cute. I love it. All right. So when you first picked this book up, what were you expecting?
So I mean, I've listened to Jay Shetty for a while on Instagram, just in his like reels and stuff. So I was expecting it to be a book about how to love better, basically, like, and not just how to love better, but also how to approach love in a more productive way.
Hmm.
So it's kind of what I was expecting going into it, and I will say it did deliver. It did. So that's essentially what you get.
Yeah. But in the sense of like, it talks about different aspects of love. Like, it's not those typical books of, oh, you guys need to set, a day a week to go on a date, and this is
Yeah.
how you're going to do a date. And, when you think of love, you kind of think of romance and how to be romantic with your partner. How can you make it spicy, right? But this book, I absolutely love this book. This was a really great pick. It breaks it down all the way from the start of loving you.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. First of all, your wand is gonna poke my damn eye out.
It's through a screen, so technically I cannot poke you with my sword.
I'm so scared. Okay, but I agree. And I will say, I think the best portion right off the bat, like I loved everything in here, but I think the most applicable portion was the first part for me.
Hmm.
And I think it's a good foundation for everybody. But where I'm at in my life and in my situation, like I think number one, like right off the bat, was the most applicable to me. It's the one that I think was the most profound, and that is, letting yourself be alone, loving yourself, and learning how to be alone in solitude, and the difference between solitude and loneliness. So I will say, like, the first bit was right off the bat just the best part. The rest of it is really good too. And I don't know, maybe you found something different because you're in a different stage of life and you're in a relationship right now. So maybe you had a different perspective. But overall, this book was a really, I think, no matter where you're at in life, this is a good book.
Right.
Out of 5 stars, we did this for the last book, but out of 5 stars, what would you give this book?
To be honest with you, I would give it a solid 4.5. No, I would give it a solid 4.5 because I felt like it was kind of hard to get it at the beginning to get into it. Like, yes, it
Hmm.
was very knowledgeable. Like, you could find really good advice in there, but it was hard for me to get into it because he kept bringing in, monks and religion, which is fine for people who are very religious,
Hmm.
and incorporating it into your everyday lifestyle. But that's just not something that I really look to when I think about a relationship. And it was kind of hard to just like jump right in. And then towards the end of it, I think I would find myself just kind of like skimming and like, okay, it was kind of repetitive.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, I'm ready for this book to be done. But there are some really great advice and pieces in here that you can pull from it.
Yeah,
So
I
that would be my overall score. What about
so
you?
4.5 out of 5. I
Yeah.
would give it I would give it like between 3.5 and 4 stars in my opinion, because I had the same thing. I will say in the beginning, I was hooked. I was hooked in the beginning from
Hmm.
like the very like introduction all the way until it got to, I want to say, like the loving your partner portion, um which I think is, yeah, like rule 3. I was hooked for the first 2 rules in the introduction, but then later on in the book I was like, okay, this is a lot. Like I feel like there was a lot of it that was drug on,
Yeah.
and there was too much information. And I think it also depends on where you're at in life. I think a lot of it I could apply to my relationship and like in my past, but it also, like, the first portion was more my speed. The
Right.
last portions didn't really, they did apply to me because I think that you can learn from, like, you can prepare yourself for future whatever is going to happen. But the first portion was definitely very engaging and very moving. Like I felt it in my soul. But the later portions of the book were just a little bit more hard to stay interested in. So
Right.
yeah, I would say overall probably 4 out of 5 stars because I love Jay Shetty and I think his writing was beautiful, and I think that it was really cool that he didn't make it just a here's a step-by-step guide on how to stay romantically interested in your partner. It
Right.
wasn't it wasn't a it was hardly about, actually I don't know that it was about romance at all. Like it was not about taking your partner on dates and like, it wasn't about like keeping it spicy and like
It
all
wasn't
those
like
things.
a
Uh-uh.
Cinderella love story. It wasn't that at all. It
Mm-mm.
was actually it gives advice in different aspects of the relationship of the hardships.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in that situation? How do you react? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you find it within yourself, and how can you shift it to where it's better for the both of you?
Yeah.
It's not just rainbows and butterflies, and that's what I
Yeah.
loved about this book too, was he dove in deeper into the nitty-gritty things that people don't like acknowledging or even talking about. So I
Yeah.
thought it was really great. I don't mean to cut you off, but before you jump to the next topic, I love this little wand because it gives me something to do with my hands when I'm not clapping.
Yeah. There you go.
See, I said a wand. I said wand just to make you happy because
I
I'm
love
about to.
that.
Yeah, because one, I love you, and two, we're about to get right into it. So
Okay.
don't mean to throw a curveball, but you say like the first portion of the book, it's about self-love, and that's something that really, you found a lot of good information and that you can
Yeah.
apply it in your life, and this was your first relationship that you've
Yes.
gone into. So in this, before you had gotten into this relationship, you already kind of developed your own self-love and being independent and doing things on your own. And yes, you were picky with your guys, but getting into this relationship, most of it was long distance. So I think part of the reason why you were so out of touch with the book was because I don't think you really experienced
Mm-hmm.
that part. So it's like reading about someone else's life and you're like, okay, why do I care about this? I can't
Mm-hmm.
apply this. That's why sometimes it's hard for me to read autobiography because I'm like, Okay, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I feel like that's why the first part is very important, because now that you've experienced a serious relationship,
Hmm.
although it was long distance, there's still a lot of emotions that you have to work through
Yeah.
to find self-love again.
Hmm. Yeah, so this was definitely my first like serious relationship, where hold on, I don't even know how to talk about this. Okay. Yeah, so this was definitely my first serious relationship where I was, I wasn't just focused on myself, because my whole life I have been focused on myself. Not because mostly because I know what I want and I know what I expect and I know what I want for myself, and there has been nobody in my life up until recently that I wanted to incorporate in my life and that I thought would elevate who I am as a person. And this was the first person that I incorporated into my life that I thought was an actually improving my life. It wasn't just a for shits and giggles relationship. It wasn't, I didn't, but that being said, it was a learning curve, partially because it was long distance, which already is hard on its own. And then going from a long distance relationship as my first serious relationship, um, that was also a little bit of a challenge, because you don't see each other every day. You get the shiny side of everything for the most part, and then when you are together, everything is exciting because you're only with each other for a short period of time. It's the nitty gritty living with each other, like, or living near each other, working through conflict that you kind of you get to experience when you're closer together that you don't experience through long distance. Um, but yeah, I am picky with my relationships, mostly because I find solitude so in my comfort zone. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I am so comfortable on my own. Letting somebody into my life is harder than being alone. Um, until I met this other person, and then it kind of flipped for me because I hadn't had any experience being in relationships before, any serious relationships before that was actually like full of more interest, I guess, and more dedication. Then like it was kind of a hard transition going from being so comfortable on my own into, okay, well, now I'm going to be considering somebody else. And it, for me, turned almost, aside from some other stuff that happened, like it was just almost negative because I stopped caring about myself entirely and went
Yeah.
almost onto like the codependent side of being in a relationship, which isn't healthy either. So, it's a little bit of a learning curve. And being on my own is definitely more so in my comfort zone. So moving forward, like being more aware, and again, I think we talked about this in the last one. Being self-aware is crucial. So being aware that, okay, I am prone, when I am in a relationship, I'm prone to codependency. How do I prepare myself for the future? Um,
Right.
okay, I go to extremes. I'm either really comfortable on my own or I'm really not. So how do I prepare myself for the future? So, but yeah, chapter one, I mean, the first chapter, the first couple of rules were so big for me because finding solitude versus loneliness, I think that when me and my ex broke up, I went through a period of feeling, I never felt massively lonely for the first, how, like 20, this is a I know that this is so against like the status quo of relationships, but I was single for like the first for 24 years. um like no actual relationships for 24 years. So going for 24 years not really feeling lonely, I had periods of like, am I ever going to be in a relationship, goddamn. Two, okay, now I'm in a relationship, but I never felt really lonely before. And then when me and my ex broke up, I felt massively lonely and very terrified of being alone, um, because I felt so comfortable in that relationship. And then having it end was just terrifying. It was scary
Yeah.
and sad and miserable. And yeah, maybe it was the right move, but it was definitely scary. And then going through all of these emotions and feelings of like, am I unlovable? Which he talks about in the book, because that's definitely something that I felt. I would say I felt it to like to a degree before I got into my last relationship, but definitely when we broke up, I felt extremely unlovable. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Um, so I went through this whole period, and now I'm starting to feel a little bit better about it. Wouldn't say it's resolved, but reading this book and going through the first couple of chapters was definitely big, because recognizing that maybe it's like productively being by yourself is different from being lonely. So being
Hmm.
in solitude and working on yourself and recognizing that no, you're not unlovable, and being alone is okay. That's a big deal. So anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but it's a different thing. It's a different learning curve, and it is strange. So
Right. It's definitely an eye opener, especially from the beginning, from not dating to going through that dating period. And then afterwards, like feeling really, truly feeling that love or loneliness because you were in love or you loved that other person. You learned um, how it feels, what it actually feels to be cared about, to be in a relationship, and going from, talking to somebody every day to becoming complete strangers to working through your emotions of, it's hard, especially coming out of your first one. You're like, or any relationship, you're like, where
yeah,
did things go wrong? You start to ponder and you think like, where did things go wrong? Like, is it me? Then you start to self-sabotage and you just go down a rabbit hole, and it's just catastrophe. You just start spiraling out, or you keep going in circles. So yeah, it is a different perspective from learning how to relearn to love yourself. But
hmm
then taking that part of learning to love yourself again, taking that aspect into your next relationship, right?
hmm
What do I need to work on, or how are things going to be different so I don't lose myself? Yes,
mm,
learn how to care for someone else and be together, but not as one,
yeah. And I
you
think it's
know?
interesting too, because and he talks about this as well, like in storybooks and in shows or whatever, and everything that we're fed through uh entertainment and media and whatever,
Hmm.
we're fed this idea of happily ever after. Very
Right.
rarely are we given a relationship that includes whatever comes after happily ever after. You don't get like, okay, well, what does day-to-day routine look like once you guys have said, yep, we're in love, we're gonna get make this work, we get married, blah blah
Hmm.
blah, like in the Cinderella story. But what comes after all of that? What about all of the conflict that is crucial to a good relationship? Because we get this idea in our head that if you guys are meant to be, if you guys are a good match, there's never going to be any problems, there's never going to be any struggles. You're just going to clash, like, or you're going to mesh together, and it's going to be perfect, and you guys are going to figure it out, and like, it's going to be the perfect equation. But in real life, what ends up happening is you find somebody that you are willing to work everything with.
Hmm.
No, you in real life, you find somebody that you're willing to work things through with. So
Right.
it may be a shit show. Everything may be a shit show in life. And if it's the
Hmm.
right person, both of you guys are going to agree and decide to commit to one another and figure out how to make it work and how to improve.
Right.
So, and that's not in every case, but in a lot of cases, that's what happens. It's not this happily ever after enchanting storybook story. And I think that that's some, like he says in the book, like love doesn't come fully formed. You develop it, you create it. Every relationship is going to look different, and every love story is going to look different.
Right.
So you don't just say, okay, well, this person did this, or this book did this, or this whatever did this, and say, okay, well, that's the solution. No,
Right.
you create it and you develop it with your partner.
Right. It's not a guideline to how to have a successful relationship. Like what
Hmm.
I said with the past book, it gives you a good foundation to build off of. And
Hmm.
to be quite honest with you, you can love somebody, but that's not going to be enough to grow,
Yeah.
as an individual or as a couple. And that kind of trailing back, when you're with somebody, you have to be careful with who you choose and how they're different, like how they handle different situations or scenarios, how how their values and morals, what they value, what they see for their future, and see if they align. And
Hmm.
even if they don't, are you able to compromise?
Yep.
Are you able to come up with a solution? Because if
Hmm.
not, then it's not going to work out, right? So it's hard because a lot of people just want to have somebody to fill a void. There's that void that you just want to fill because you see everyone else doing it. You're like, I want that. I see that. But what they don't see is that that's going to be your person for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
right? That's someone you're going to build with. And if you're not able to talk about your emotions, or if you're not able to really confide in each other and get into the nitty gritty, you're not going to have a successful relationship. And
Hmm.
that's where people nowadays are like, this is hard. So that's why we see a lot of divorces, a lot of breakups, because people aren't willing to let their ego down and
Hmm.
to compromise and to really hear their partner out. It's always a competition of who, I'm better than you, or I make more money, so I should make all the decisions. It's never, we're both right here. Your ideas are as valid as mine. Your
Yep.
emotions are equally valid as mine, right?
Hmm.
It's a partnership. It's not a domination. So that's
Hmm.
where it kind of, going back to the book, I find it very enlightening because it gives you tips on how to shift your mindset from me, and you, to we as
Yeah.
one.
Hmm. And I think that entering a relationship too, one of the things he talks about in Rule 3 is define love before you think it, feel it, or say it, which
Mhm.
is so fucking important. Because I think going like if you define love as, yeah, I love my buddy, I love my buddy, I love my, whatever. Um, that is different from I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. I fucking love them. Those are two different feelings, two different engagements. So figuring out how both of you define love. Someone who has maybe never grown up in a family where love has been shown very much. Maybe they grew up in a traumatic home. Maybe they grew up without feeling love ever, really, like romantic, like I want to be with you forever love, or I want to care about you forever love. Maybe they've never felt that or don't know what that is. They're going to define love differently than someone who has.
Right.
So if someone who has never felt love long term in a deeply committed way enters into a relationship and is like and one person says I love you, it's going to mean something to different to somebody else. Like that
Right.
person isn't going to, they're going to hear that and maybe they're going to hear it and they're going to think, okay, cool. Maybe they're going to hear it and they'll be like, oh, whoa, what? Like people define it different ways. So having a productive conversation in the very, very beginning of understanding, maybe not the very beginning. That's a little extreme. But you know what I mean? Like when you get to that, when you get deeper into the relationship, understanding what love means for both of you is important so that there's an understanding, there's communication happening. When one person says something, the other person isn't going to take it passively or way too much. Like, there's an understanding of what's happening there and what's being said and what the message that's trying to be sent. So I think that was something important, and I don't think that I would have thought about that much had it not been for this book. That understanding that everyone defines something differently. Love is not something that is defined the
It's
same
not
by every person.
universal.
Mm-mm.
Right. It's not universal. The way that you view love versus how I view love versus how the random person on the street views love. Like
Hmm.
everyone has a different idea in their head. And
Hmm.
like what you said earlier, how, the media shows the knight in shining armor may not be what someone else wants,
Yeah.
you know? So I definitely agree that that's a very important thing to establish. And it's important to establish early on. You say yes later in the relationship, but how does a relationship start? You start off by dating. You go on dates, get to know the person, and a few weeks, a few months go by, and you're like, okay, like I think I can see something with you. So then you become exclusive. Or even if you, through your dating period, you do become exclusive, you have to come up with an expectation of what do you see and what do I see, and
Hmm.
is it going to work? Can we make this work? Because if not, then why waste your time trying to build with someone who has a different idea of what they want their love life or their life to look like in the
Hmm.
future?
Yeah.
So I believe people can change, but I don't believe in changing someone else's perspective or view, because you're just giving all this energy to trying to change that person that you lose sight at what you really want. And I believe that yes, I do think there are soulmates, but I also do think there are people who will choose you and show up every single day.
Hmm.
And that's what matters.
Hmm.
Because a soulmate can be you and me,
Yeah.
or it
We
can
are
be,
soulmates, Chloe.
but
Oh my God.
it comes to a point where even three years in, yes, we have our challenges, and yes, I have a different idea of love and he has a different idea of love, and but there comes a sense where we compromise and we build it and we make individual ideas our idea, and he still shows up, he tries, right? And that's
Hmm.
that's all I can ask for, is if you try. But if
Yeah.
someone is so stuck in their way and they don't want to change, why bother?
Yeah. Well,
Why
yeah. So I've
bother?
got a couple of things about that. One, I think that there is a huge thing to be said. I know it's cliche, but this is a big thing for my past stuff. So, like, it sounds cliche and it possibly sounds cliche. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. But understanding, and the book says this too, like understanding how to love yourself. How are you going to learn how to love somebody if you can't love yourself? So that's a big thing. So learning how to love yourself in any degree. I'm not saying it can't be done in reverse. I'm not saying you can't love somebody and then like, yes, you can love somebody else, decide to commit to them, and then figure out how to love yourself as well. Especially if that person loves you enough to give you the space to learn how to love yourself. That can happen, right? So that can
Mm-hmm.
happen. However, let's say you've already gone past that, and I know this is somebody gave me some advice recently. One of my closest friends gave me advice recently, saying um, that I won't throw out names or anything, but somebody gave me some advice recently that letting go of expectation in a relationship is important because if you are in a relationship with somebody and, for example, you are watching TikTok or you are watching somebody else's relationship and then you develop this expectation, that person is getting flowers every week. Why am I not getting flowers? And then all of a sudden you tie getting flowers to being loved. So if that person isn't getting you flowers on their own without being told to get you flowers, they must not love me, right? So one, understanding your partner and how they show love is important. But two, being tied to this expectation that getting flowers means that I'm going to be loved. That's not the case,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Right.
maybe they aren't showing you love the way that you expect them to show you love. And in this example, this person was like, yeah, I was really hoping that on the weekends I would get some sleep. Since this person didn't have to work, I was hoping I could get some sleep on the weekends. But she said, when I let go of that expectation of getting sleep on the weekends and just saying, okay, I'm not going to sleep or like sleep in on the weekends. when she let go of that expectation, her life and her relationship improved dramatically because she wasn't resentful for no reason. You know, like
Mm.
if you have an
Resentment
expectation,
is,
yeah. So like let's say you real and to feel loved, and this can be a conversation that's had in a relationship. To feel loved, you expect a good morning text and a good night text. It can be that
hmm
simple. You want to
hmm
be told good morning and you want to be told good night. If the person doesn't do that, then you're going to be like, "Oh, they're going to bed angry at me," or "Oh, they don't love me." Right? But if you say, "Hey, by the way, if I feel loved if you I would feel loved if you texted me good morning and you texted me good night," right? If you did that and then all of a sudden they do that, then you're feeling loved, everyone's needs are met. It's really not that hard. And if the person really loves you, then they're going to be willing to do that, right? But
right,
now it's a different problem if you're saying, "Hey, to feel loved, this is what I need," and then the person still doesn't show up. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe that's a conversation that needs to be had. Maybe there's some things to work through there. But that's also important, is to say, okay, is this person providing me with what I need to feel loved? Um, and it could be even deeper than that, you know. But in this case, we're just talking about the superficial, and this is something that, not really superficial, but you know, this is just an example. But yeah, that's a key thing, and I've never heard that before, and I think that that was super important. It's not easy to let go of expectation, but I will say, hey, okay, am I expecting too much? Am I expecting something that I'm not asking for? You know, I'm just expecting them to read my mind. I think, and this may be not fun to hear, but I think as women, a lot of times in partnerships, we expect things like if we see it on TikTok, we expect somebody to just know, hey, that's how, like, you need to do that. You know, or if we see it on social
yeah,
media, or if we think it up in our mind, or if it's a storybook thing, we think it up. We expect them to do that. And that's not how situations are all the time. Sometimes
right.
they are, maybe, but you don't know what's going on behind scenes. So I think that that's super important, is to have open conversations about expectations, and then fulfilling those expectations. And then also just loosening our, um, not standards. I don't think you should loosen standards, but loosen your idea of what you expect of your partner, especially if they're busy or if they are showing you love in the way that they can. And if you guys are having those open conversations on what love is to one another.
Right. And that's very eye-opening. But you better still buy me flowers, I'm just saying.
Do you hear that, Colin? You better
Do
buy
you
her
hear that?
flowers.
Don't listen to what she said, but I still want my flowers.
But that's what
Um,
I'm for. That's what we're for. You bought me flowers and I bought you
I know,
flowers.
I know, I know, I know.
Soulmate.
Yeah, and I still love it. I still love it. I feel the love. But then, I see what she's saying and I hear it. Like,
Mhm.
it's so easy to compare. It's like, oh, why does she get that and why don't I get that? But here's one thing, love language. What
Mhm.
is your love language? Is that your love language? Is gift giving or receiving gifts? Is physical touch? Is quality time? Like, what is your love language? And you can't base off your expectations off of what you see from someone else. You can't compare your relationship. And we kind of talked. Me and Colin actually had a really good conversation the other day. And yes, we're 3 years in and still having these type of conversations, but it's
Yeah.
important because expectations change all the time.
Mhm.
And I let him know, I'm like, hey, I know it's really hard for you to show love to me in the way that I want to be loved, but this is what I want. And this is what I need to feel love, because everything else I can provide for myself,
Mhm.
right? And I get that you want to build a life with me, and I understand that, we can make things work, but I deserve to feel loved the way I want to be loved.
Mhm.
And I go in the same mindset as him too. It's not just the female, the males matter too. Or partner, whatever the gender, the opposite matters too. How can you make that
Yes.
other person feel loved and vice
Yes.
versa? Because if I'm not accommodating him in the way he needs to feel loved, although he's very simple and very easy going, unlike me, where I'm like, just buy me some damn flowers. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're not accommodating each other, then it's just going to become a chore. It's going to become a, is this a relationship or is just a friendship? Like,
Yeah.
what separates the two? And I like the idea of letting go expectations, but letting go your expectations that everyone else is putting out there, and
Yeah.
figure out with your partner what you want or what you need to feel loved.
Yep.
Because it's important. If you're not taking care of yourself and your relationship,
Yeah.
what's going to happen a year from
Yeah.
now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? You're going to have resentment. You're going to have that resentment of,
Mm-hmm.
I could have been with someone who would love me the way that I want to be loved.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I think too, because I will say, like, I think I in my past relationship, I think that I was showing love in a way that was not being received. So if they don't receive love, like you said, understanding love languages, I may be buying gifts a lot, you know, because that is one of my love languages. I like giving gifts. Receiving gifts
Mm-hmm.
isn't so much my love language, but I like giving gifts as a way to show
Mm-hmm.
love. So I may be giving lots of gifts and I may be doing this or that or this, but that person isn't feeling loved because maybe what that person needs is something else entirely, right? So understanding what that other person's love language is so that you can accommodate that is huge. Um, and then also, if you love the person, then you will do that. Like whether your love language is
Right.
this or that. And it goes back and forth, of course. It goes back and forth, but it's definitely super important. I had a thing that I was going with on that idea, and then it's totally gone now.
I think with the alcohol, it just like our train of thoughts just kind of go, "Ah," at least for me.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
I had a very intentional thought, and then it's totally gone totally. But
yeah.
yeah, anyway, this is another thing too that I thought was so important. Because I think a lot of times in relationships, conflict is viewed as problems. You know, like
Mhm.
conflict is viewed as this isn't working. If we're fighting, this isn't working. And one of the examples that he gave was when they were when he was at dinner or something with a friend, they overheard a couple fighting at the table over, and his friend was like, "Me and my partner never fight." But that's not a sign of a good relationship. If you aren't fighting, you guys aren't learning one another. A relationship that can have conflict and overcome it productively
Mhm.
is a good relationship because you're learning. If you can learn how to fight together, then you can learn how to stay together. That's huge because conflict is inevitable. I like even in outside of relationships, I've had friendships where I mean, shit, even in like, so this is a little bit of a exposure, but like me and my sister-in-law met in college and we were close friends for years. We still are close friends. But she married my brother. And I will say like that created conflict on its own. Like there was conflict because she married my brother and she started dating my brother. That was unexpected, right? And
Mhm.
but because of that, I think we're closer now, like because of the conflict and overcoming the conflict, we're closer now than we were, you know,
Yeah.
before. And understanding that we're committed to one another and that we're willing to talk to one another and willing to grow with one another is huge. You and I, like learning how to, okay, this is a problem, you know, learning how to overcome it and understanding one another and being respectful of one another and learning how to become better friends. If you can't have conflict, you just have a superficial relationship,
Right. And you're
you
not getting
know?
into the deep. It's like an everyday, it just becomes like someone I just know or someone I just interact with and move on. But once you
Hmm.
have that conflict or once you dive in deeper and really get to know each other, then that opens up a whole new barrier for that relationship. And you
Hmm.
can become closer and you know your boundaries and you do respect each other enough to where it's someone you can rely on too. You know, it's
Hmm.
someone that you see long term. And if you're not
Yeah.
able to get past that kind of barrier, then then what is the point of keep trying, you know, especially if it's one-sided. If you're the one constantly trying and trying and trying and the other one's not reciprocating, then what is the point, you know?
Yep. Exactly. And I think that also ties into understanding one another's fighting styles, which is something I've never heard. I've heard of love languages, heard of all of that, but understanding someone's fighting style is also so important. And he says there's three. There's venting, there's hiding, and there's exploding. And understanding somebody's fighting style is just as important as understanding somebody's love language. He doesn't even
Right.
go into love languages really here, but the fighting
Mm-mm.
styles is important because conflict can make or break a relationship. If you guys can't learn how to fight together, you guys can't learn how to be together.
And not
So,
push the other person either, because if your person is the type that hides and needs time to process, and you're just pushing, you're going to make them go down a rabbit hole even more, and make them
yeah.
feel small in a in an argument. And that's not the point of an argument. The argument is something happened, you don't like it, so how can we talk about this and respect each other's boundaries and
Yeah.
figure out like what we need to do to overcome it. And even if it's not in that hour or 30 minutes, if that person needs time, allow them to have time. It's not like you're going anywhere. You're still in the relationship, right? So
Hmm.
allow that person to have their time to process it. And
Yeah.
another big thing that he had mentioned in the book, which really stuck with me, is do not, if there's something that's bothering you and you want to bring it up with your partner, do not bring it up in a place that you're vulnerable
Yeah.
with each other, like the bedroom where you guys go to sleep, the dining room table where you guys have dinner together. Like maybe go into, let's say you have a little office in the house, go in the office, or go out on a walk, go to the library, because you don't want to tie in that negativity into the space where you're supposed to be vulnerable, and you're sharing that blah 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 blah
It's
and where
more,
you're
yeah.
sharing and where you're sharing a comfortable place with each
Yeah.
other, because then
Where you're supposed
then
to be more intimate, like more intimate with one another.
exactly, and it
Yeah.
makes it more hostile, so to be able to
You don't want to taint,
separate
you
that
don't want to taint the space with that negativity.
negativity, and you want to be able to
Yeah.
separate it. If you can separate that, and if you can appropriately bring up a scenario or situation where you feel upset or you don't like with your partner appropriately and not irrationally, then you guys are good. If you
Hmm.
can keep that going, then you can overcome anything. But again, it comes all down to ego and how you perceive the relationship itself.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I know that there was when I went to a coffee shop a few months ago to meet a friend, and I got there way too early. And I remember there was a couple sitting at a table kind of farther away. I definitely couldn't hear them, but I could see them, and from their body language and everything,
Hmm.
they were having an argument, right? Like, and it looked like they were having an intense argument. I don't know if they were breaking up or what. It didn't look like a breakup. It looked like they were talking through some shit. Um,
Hmm.
and I remember thinking, that's an interesting choice to have an argument over coffee and, a sandwich. But after reading this book, it's interesting to see that was probably a wise choice for them to not take their conflict into their living space, whatever space that might be. They took their conflict to a place where they don't have to revisit it if they don't want to, and that
Hmm.
negativity stayed there, and they were able to productively have that conversation. And because of the environment, they couldn't raise their voices at one another. They had to actively, because for me, it's really easy for me to get carried away and start
Yeah, me
raising my
too.
voice. Yeah, where I'm like,
You need
don't
that
you
self
understand me?
control.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it gives you a
yeah, that's
space to
me.
be like, okay, calm down. We're in public. Don't embarrass anybody, and have that conversation. So I thought
Yeah,
that that
guys, I'm
was a
not
really
like
cool.
that.
Girl, me either.
I am not like that. I don't give a fuck where we are.
Oh, I
Just
do.
well, that's that's something I'm trying to control and try and work on too, because it's easy. Sometimes it can be very triggering for me to get upset over something that, can relate to past trauma. But
Hmm.
I mean, just like Scotland, and alcohol doesn't, kind of plays a part in it too.
The
But we were in
bubblies.
Scotland, the
Yeah.
bubblies, we were in Scotland, and all of a sudden I was just really angry, which I think comes along with being in Scotland.
Yeah.
Drink
Oh, I
angry.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
we were at
gotta
the
have the
bar, and then
angry Scottish person.
yep, and then I became that angry Scottish person, and I was picking on a fight that happened 2 years ago. So,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
based off of
I remember that.
insecurities, you know?
Yeah. And then me and my mom bolted to get food. And we did get food. I don't know why I put air quotes, but Colin apparently felt very abandoned. So I feel
It's
bad for
okay.
that.
He survived.
He did. He did. She and I were just like, what do we do? But
Yeah, so
yeah.
don't, nobody's perfect, and that's why I'm putting this scenario out there because it shows that it's something you constantly have to work on individually. I mean, yes, together, but also individually, and how to control your emotions.
Hmm.
You can't control how something makes you feel, but you can control how you react.
Hmm. That's true. And that's key.
So,
That's key for anything, but I think especially
mhm.
in a relationship. And that's where solitude comes in. Understanding yourself
Yep.
before you enter a relationship will help you understand, like, when situations arise, how you need to approach them, what you need to make your partner aware of, like all of those things. So that's definitely key. And it all comes back to solitude, but it's all, also like the way that you develop your relationship is very important. And if you entered a relationship prior to reading this book and maybe you did some of the steps out of order, you can change it up to fit you. Like it doesn't have to be picture
Hmm.
perfect to match whatever the steps that Jay Shetty decided on.
Right,
Um,
right.
but it is a really good guideline to be like, okay, now if I read back, how do I navigate where I'm at currently, so
Hmm.
that I can better improve for the future, so that we can both be on the same
Exactly.
page.
And how to improve yourself and your partner in the relationship. And that's where, I mean, Scotland just happened what, in December, and when I
Yeah.
read through the argumentative phase, that's something that I've been working on. I was like, oh my god, that's really good advice, and it's something I've been working on, and now we are able to have conversations without the irrational emotions with it, right?
Yeah.
I'm able to, like, okay, I need to step back, think about what is really making me feeling upset, and how am I going to bring this up so it's not just yelling back and forth and just hurting each other's feelings, or making you feel less of a person.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something you can apply to whatever phase of a relationship you're in,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or if you're
I
looking
definitely agree.
into getting into a relationship too, or if you're
Yeah.
going
How
through
to
a breakup.
prepare. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. All
How
the
to
fun
prepare for
things.
your next one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Definitely a great one. A good read. I'll probably go back and read some of this differently in the future. Um, just because of where I'll probably be somewhere in the future. Um, but as of right now, yeah, so far so good. And I think that it was definitely a beneficial read.
yes, I agree.
But
I would definitely recommend it to anybody, even if you've never been in a relationship, or if you've been through 10, or you're going through a breakup, or you've been married for 20 long years. Like, it's a really great book. And they always say if you're not learning, you're not living. So this is definitely a book
yeah,
you can pick up and learn from and
yeah,
apply it to your relationship and
yeah.
yourself.
Even if you like, for example, like even if you're committed to like never being in a relationship ever, like ever, this would be a good book to read, to listen, or to listen to better understand human interaction in general
Yeah.
and understand how love works in any capacity. Because I think it can make you a better friend. It can make you a better partner. It can make you a better any kind of like daughter, son,
Daughter,
friend,
son.
like anything. Yeah,
Hmm.
it can make you a better, because it's ultimately, yeah, there are pieces of it that are specifically applied to partners, but ultimately a lot of it can be applied to any human interaction. So
Yeah, I mean, even with arguments.
Yeah.
I've seen arguments between my coworkers. I've gotten in arguments with my coworkers, and there's different ways that you can, approach it differently.
So yeah, definitely would recommend this book
Anybody,
to
yes,
you or to folks. At least the first half, in my
yes.
opinion. For me, it was the first half.
It was the whole book for me, so
But
it's something I can apply in
there you
my
go.
relationship, and something I'm definitely gonna go back and read some more and apply it because this has a lot of good information with it. But
Yeah. Yes,
yes.
ma'am. Cheers.
So
Yeah.
that wraps up this episode. Cheers, babes. Until next time, we are going to be having a February tipsy chat.